Alright guys, we are on a no AC call, and it's a little cool. I'm wearing a t-shirt, but it's in the 60s. It's 63 degrees today. It's 65 degrees upstairs. It's the third floor unit. So I turned the thermostat on up there, the blower cycled on. I've got the power turned off out here because as cold as it is up there, as cool as it is, I didn't want this thing to be running and cooling down. The thermostat only allows you to set the cooling temperature so far down, so I wanted to not have this thing running until I was hooked up to it, and we'll see what it's doing. Said it cools intermittently, then it stops, and so I don't know if it's freezing up or we're having a refrigerant problem or not, or I may have to go up there and, if everything looks okay up here, get up in that little, it's a tight attic, little scuttle hole inside of a closet, so I may have to pop up there and make sure we don't have an issue with a float switch tripping, and then the attic being warm, the water starts to evaporate out, water level drops, float switch resets, comes on, fills up more water in the pan, shuts off again, that kind of thing. But let's see what our standing pressures in this thing are at. About 180, 173 on the low side, 186 on the high sides. My standing pressures, like I said, it did run for a couple of minutes, and I came out here and pulled the disconnect while I was getting my things off the truck to come around here and hook up. So there's refrigerant in the system. How much, I don't know. We'll see what happens when it starts running. Power back on. And let's see where our pressure stabilize out at. Actually figured a cool little place to put my tripod. I just stick it down in this pocket right here with the feet not extended, and holds it pretty well. Angle it up if I need to angle it up. But we'll see what our superheat and subcooling are on this thing, and I don't know how accurate that's going to be. Like I said, it's 65 inside, it's 63 outside. So let it run for a few minutes. See where we're at. This is a 2-ton Temp Star. I think it's a Temp Star. It's an ICP product anyway. Let's see what we got. Nope. This is a 2-ton Comfort Maker heat pump. We're on a kind of a 3-story townhouse type deal. It's the end unit, not one in the middle. Older townhouses. But what we got in here, make sure we don't have any intermittent loose connections. Wire nuts sure do spin. Check that real quick. I see that a lot. Sometimes you get too long of a piece of thermostat wire inside your wire nut, and it wants to poke across against the top of the wire nut and not let it tighten all the way down. So typically when I've got a long piece like that, I'm gonna snip a little bit of it off so that wire nut will get on there and tighten real good. There we go. Now it's tight. Not sure if it's a TXV up there or not. This thing's calling for 11 degrees of subcooling. We'll have to check and see if there's a TXV. We're running right at 10 degrees of subcooling on this thing. Superheat, it's kind of low, down about 1.7. But like I said, it's cold up there, 64, 65 degrees up there, 63 out here. And the ceiling registers in this is kind of a large bonus room area up there. And the ceiling registers in this thing are in this right around, there's one not too far from the return, so it could be sucking that 50 degree air. This thing's probably blowing 48 degrees or colder into that return, so that can explain a little bit of a low superheat. Pressures don't look bad, not for the conditions we're working with. 63 outside, 64, 65 inside. So I've got warm air coming out of the top of the condenser, so I know I'm pulling some heat out. I did look at the filter before I came out here. The filter looks okay. I don't know where the drain line is on this thing. Probably over here somewhere. I don't know. Well, another one's sitting there. There it is, I think. That might be the one for the upstairs. Right there. They've had it turned off for a couple of days. So, probably need to go up there and check that drain line and see if there's any water in that drain pan. Maybe the float switch tripped on it, but right now everything out here seems to look okay. So let's go up in the attic and see what we find. So just as I was getting ready to go inside, this thing shut off, and you gotta kind of look out for loose wire situations. Sometimes it may not be the problem, I don't know. I'm still gonna go up in the attic and look around, but it looks like there was some kind of a wire repair. I looked down inside of it, and obviously that's not a natural bundle of wires there, but I wiggled that and it turned on and off. So I backed this wire nut off, and it kind of had a bad connection there. I think possibly these little blue wire nuts will hang on for dear life if you don't put them on wires that are too large. But that's not connected real good. Typically, when I'm doing stuff like this, I want to make sure these wires are usually always twisted together real good, even before I put a wire nut on it. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a little bit larger wire nut on that. These wires are a little thick. Those blue wire nuts, I mean, they're good for thermostat wire, but not really good for anything else. And they hang on for dear life if you put more than 2 wires under it. But I like it. I like something that deep enough that I'm going to get around the sheathing on the wire, grip it, and then get on there nice and tight. But that may or may not be the problem. But we're going to go on up in the attic, and I'm going to try to clean this up a little bit. But matter of fact, while I'm thinking about it, let me go ahead and do it now. So this has a low and a high pressure switch in it, so it comes off that defrost board, goes through the low pressure switch, comes back out here, goes through the high pressure switch, and then it goes back over to the contactor over there. If either one of those switches opens, it's gonna shut the system down. That may or may not have been the problem, I don't know. It's just something I noticed. And I'm gonna try to tighten. They put so many wires in these things. They make them a mile long, and they really don't have to be as long as they make them. And trying to get them all stored away and tucked away is a challenge sometimes. That's a little bit better than it was, I guess. Anyway, so let's go up in the attic and see what we can come up with up there. All right, well, this is a good one. Kind of a low pitch attic. Air handlers over here. Like somebody left the old ream. Looks like that's what used to be up here. Left the old ream air handler up here that had the heat coils inside the blower housing. Yeah, guess they didn't feel like taking that down. I bet they had fun getting that thing in that closet and getting it up here. But anyway, let's I'm sure the light, oh, I'll be damned, it's on the wrong side of the air handler anyway. So let's see if we can get over there and see what's going on. I mean, I'm not seeing any water in the drain pan at this point. These shoe covers off. Slipping and sliding around up here. Try to wear shoe covers in every house I go to. I don't want to track anything and sell somebody's house. Oh. I definitely wouldn't want anybody doing that in my house, but I'm not that peculiar. But I won't be paying for anybody's carpet to get cleaned either way, because you put one spot in it, and of course they want to tell you the whole carpet, every carpet in the house has to be clean so it matches. Yeah, they left the old drain pan up here too. Wasn't that sweet of them. So there's a drain line, runs back there. And it's got one of them little funky traps on it. So I'll probably go out there and pull a vacuum on the drain line. Looks like the SS2 switch has been replaced. I'll pop that open in a minute. Let's see if there's any water in it. Water's running here in the sides. I guess this is the old one. Jesus. It looks like something got hold of that and was chewing it up. That's pretty. But I want to check my connections up here and make sure all this stuff is good. I'm going to check my temperature across the coil first. Make sure that's decent. Oh, fucking, is that a wasp? Something buzzing on me up here. I don't know what it is. Big horsefly looking thing. Anyway. Maybe it's the headlamp he's attracted to. I don't know. So they put a plenum on the return. He didn't do jack shit on the supply side. Would have been nice to, if I can feel air leaking out of that right now. Almost. Yeah, they just, yeah. What that is what you call a joke, gentlemen. A bad joke. But it's a rental property. They usually go cheap, and yeah, so proves my point. You get what you pay for. So let's see what our supply temperature is on this thing. Outdoor unit still on and running. Blower's running. And get the screws out of this door. Check our wiring in there. And make sure that's good. So it may have very well been that wire connection outside. Like I said, I don't have any water in the drain pan. We've got to have a new SS2 switch on the secondary line, which that drives me crazy. Some of the guys I watch, they go into attics and the drain pan is orange as all get out, rusted all to pieces. You got one drain line coming off the unit and there's no secondary line hooked up or anything like that. No SS2 connected to it or anything. And if there's a drain line on the drain pan, it's just going to hold water and drain. You see a float switch on there. If it's draining out of a drain line connected to the drain pan, it's never going to fill up with enough water to trip that float switch. So it just sits up there every year and rusts until it comes through the ceiling. So some of that stuff never makes sense. But I mean, like I said, every region's different. So you do what they let you get away with, I guess, but if it comes back to bite you, it comes back to bite you. It's just a risk you take. So we got a 42-degree supply temperature. Let's see what our return temperature is. Oh. Everything in here appears to look okay. Got our float switch. So we're using our SS2 switch as braking R to the outdoor unit and the thermostat, which is what I like to do, because I want the whole system to shut down. I don't want it to shut the outdoor unit off, keep running the blower. I want it to shut everything down. Thermostat goes blank, homeowner knows there's a problem, they get on the phone with you a lot quicker. So anyway, so it's wired up okay. It's braking R. Let's see if there's any sign of water in it. Which it works. Flipped it upside down. I heard the outdoor unit shut off. The thermostat's going to reset. So there's no water in the SS2 switch. So we'll set that back. Temperature split's good. I got a 19-degree temperature drop across this thing, so it may have just been that loose wire. This is why they said that they would heat or cool one day and not cool the next day. If that connection under that wire nut was loose, and like I said, try to bring everything up and twist it before I put the wire nut on. If you don't line it up properly and you put the wire nut on, then one of your wires slides down and it's not up in there where it gets twisted completely, you get a loose connection. That may have been our problem the whole time. But anyway, this is older. This place is probably 30-year-old townhouse. It's older. I'm just checking the back side of that pan to see what's back there. But I think what we need to do is we need to come up here and add a switch to the drain pan, because the only shutoff we have is this SS2 switch on this thing. And you see this red wire that's on here. That used to be, that's typically the wire that comes on the drain pan float switches. So where that is, I don't know. I don't see one. So we've got that SS2 switch, which will work okay. But if that thing fails for whatever reason and water starts to go in this drain pan, there's nothing to shut it off. And then you get water coming through the ceiling, and this is a cheap looking drain pan. So I'm going to get a float switch and come up here and put on this drain pan and wire it in series with that SS2 switch. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add a float switch to this drain pan. I mean, there's no sense in not putting a float switch on a drain pan sitting on the floor, especially if you've terminated the drain, which is what I prefer. Like I said, you run a secondary drain out of your drain pan and run it outside. Primary clogs up. Okay, first of all, you want to run either put an SS2 switch on it or run a secondary drain into the pan so the water doesn't flood the inside of the air handler. That's just common sense, if you ask me. You don't want to ruin a piece of equipment with an improperly ran drain line. See people, they just hook up a primary, they never hook up a secondary drain. There's a reason. There's another port right there, not to be left open or just sitting there with nothing on it. You got your primary, and you run your secondary. If you're just going to run a primary, when that thing clogs up, you're going to flood the piece of equipment, possibly the plenum if it's the same level at the bottom. Supply and return, the electrical compartment. You're going to flood all that with water, and you're going to get mildew and crud inside the air handler, mold probably, and you're just going to ruin the equipment. Run that water out. If the primary clogs, you want to make sure that water exits and ends up in this pan. And then you want to put a float switch on this pan and terminate that drain line on the pan. Because if you run the water into the pan, or you let it flood the air handle like a lot of people do, this thing sits up here and drains out of the secondary now, off this pan. Year after year after year, waiting for that one to clog up. Meantime, your pan's rusting, and then it's going to end up going through a ceiling. So terminate that, put a float switch on the secondary pan to ensure that when there's a problem with the drain line and the water draining the proper way, you're shutting this system down and not causing other problems. The homeowner knows, bam, the air conditioner doesn't work, I've got a problem. Then you come out, you find the drain clogged, you get it cleared, and it's fixed then. It doesn't sit there for 2 or 3 summers filling this pan and rusting and rusting and rusting. Now you got a drain pan you got to figure out how you got to get out from under the unit and replace and all that stuff. So just run a secondary drain line into the secondary drain pan, put a float switch on it. Don't put a drain on the secondary drain pan, so that when it gets water in it, it's going to shut the system off. The homeowner's going to know they've got a problem. And if you think, oh, well, then I got to pump water out of this whole big pan, here's another trick. If you set the air handler high enough, instead of putting the SS2 switch on that, put your P-trap on it, and then stick your little 6x6 pan inside the big pan, run the drain off the overflow into that little pan, then put a float switch on the little pan, put one on the big pan, run them in series, and then when you come out and you got a clogged drain line, The only thing you have to clean out is that little small pan that you ran your secondary drain into, and it tripped the float switch on that little pan. You can just dump it in the big pan and let it evaporate, or you can pour it down the drain line. It's just a 6x6 pan, about that big, is all you need. Set it inside this one, put a float switch on it, and then it'll shut everything down. And then you won't have all that water that you have to sit up here and pump out of the attic. So anyway, I'm not going to go back into the air handler with this one. What I'm going to do is I've got my 2 wires right here off of the SS2 switch. One's going in, one's coming back out, and then I'm just going to run them. I'm going to run one in series with that. So I'm basically going to run R back out through that switch, back through that switch, and then back into the air handler. And we're going to break it like that, so I don't have to take that door back off. Bag of wire nuts. But yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science draining water downhill. You just got to make sure you put in your proper protections, and you do it in a manner that it notifies the homeowner fairly quickly that there's a problem, and they give you a call and get it fixed, rather than letting this thing sit up here and hold water forever and turn into a, I mean, I see so many videos go up in attics and it's just a big orange gunk of rusted pan, and then a lot of guys you see, they don't even address the situation. They just leave it just like it is, you know. And as far as I'm concerned, once you're there, it's your problem. I don't care who installed it that way. Once you've gone up there and laid your eyes on it, that thing comes through the ceiling. First thing I'm going to ask you when you come back is, you were up there for about a half hour, 45 minutes. Why didn't you mention that problem to me when you were there last time? So, and homeowners do that. So you got to be careful how you do this stuff. Cover your ass. Give them the proper information, the proper solutions. Then if they decline it, you're covered. Not a problem anymore. Hey, I gave you the opportunity to get this rectified and get this done better. You chose not to do it. I don't know what else to tell you, except how much it's going to cost to fix it this time. So anyway, we're finished up here. I've got this float switch in. Let's see what we got going on outside, and I think we're pretty much done. All right, guys, so everything's running. I think this wire connection was our problem. Like I said, there's little blue wire nuts. Anything more than 2 thermostat wires, they're just, especially if the wires are too long, those things are just, I mean, I keep them, but if I've got a thicker wire, the inside of this thing is real narrow, and it just doesn't let you get down and bite on that wire real good. I wiggled it, it shut off, it came back on. So pretty sure that was our reason, because when I got here and turned it on, it came on and it ran just fine, and it was doing okay. And then I heard it trip out as I was getting ready to get back inside to get up in the attic. It came back around here and it came back on, and I'll say that wire connection was our issue. There's no water upstairs, but I didn't mean to go on a drain line rant, but I gotta tell you, I don't know many people that got $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 sitting around ready to pay for somebody to get all their ceiling replaced. I take drain lines and water stuff very seriously, because it's one thing that can easily be prevented if you take the right measures, put in the right safety switches, run your drain lines correctly, set everything up right properly. Yeah, you may have to come out and clean some water out of a pan, but I'd rather be up there cleaning water out of a pan than paying somebody $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to come out here and replace ceiling damage and anything else under it that got wet. And so anyway, guys, got these little boxes too. I keep things separated and put stake-ons in this box, screws, caps, things like that, which I need to grab a cap because there is no cap on the true suction port down here at the bottom of this unit. So we're going to put a cap on that, and that will conclude. Keep another one with wire nuts in it, and they all sit side by side in that pocket on the back of the bag. But anyway, that's it, guys. Like, subscribe, appreciate you watching, and I hope they stay simple like this, because that makes life a lot easier. Have a good one.